Okay, great. Welcome to our webinar for the Week in Dialogue with the Author. And today is June 17th, and it's a little bit afternoon, New York time. And we are talking with Hilary Bradbury today. We were going to be also talking with William Torbert, but he will not be joining us today, and Hilary will talk about that in a minute. And this conversation today is kind of the culminating webinar for the Week in Dialogue with the Authors that the Taos Institute was hosting this week on our online platform. And the title for today is Eros, Power, Relational Action Inquiry, Integrating Subjectivity, Intersubjectivity, and Objectivity. And Hilary and Bill Torbert wrote a book called Eros, Power, Love in the Spirit of Inquiry, and we want to welcome them today. The Taos Institute is a nonprofit educational organization, and we're founded in 1993, so we're 23 years old now as an organization, and we have associates and colleagues around the globe in probably 70 countries that participate with us and participate in our programs. And this program that we have this week called Week in Dialogue with the Authors, this is, I think, our fifth Week in Dialogue with the Authors. The others have been with other people and have also been lively conversations, and all culminate with a webinar like this. We also have a PhD program. We have workshops and conferences. We invite you to look at our website and find other ways that you might join in and participate in various programs. We have a publishing arm. We publish about 30 printed books, and we have probably about 40 books that are available for free online through our World Share Books project. And those are full-length books in PDF form, and you just go to our website and you can download those for free from anywhere in the world. So we're excited about that. And most of our work is based on what we call the relational practices. And it's, you know, when we look at social construction, how do we socially construct our reality, create meaning together, and create the kind of world we want to live in. And so that's what the Taos Institute is all about. We work in the various different disciplines and domains: education, healthcare, organizational change, community development, therapy, and we invite all the various practitioners and scholars to come together in conversation to help and learn and do research together. So we're excited about this opportunity today, and we welcome you. And to also get us started, I would like to give you a little bit of background on Hilary and Bill. Hilary is a scholar, practitioner, author whose work focuses on the human and organizational dimensions of creating collaborative learning communities. Hilary's own research is on personal integration as a key for advancing human capacity for collaborative organizing. She obtained her undergraduate degree in German and theology at Trinity College, Dublin, Ireland, and continued her graduate work at Harvard and University of Chicago Divinity School. Starting her professional academic career at Case Western Reserve University in the Organization Behavior Department, she was professor of management, also in Oregon's Health Sciences University. She's also a visiting professor of action research for the Business School of, Lucerne, Switzerland, research associate with the Taos Institute with us, and with IDS at Suffolk University, UK. Hilary's work with action research originally took off in collaboration with Peter Reason. She has since edited 3 volumes of the Handbook of Action Research and serves the peer review journal Action Research as editor-in-chief. And then Bill, who could not be with us today, but he has a background in politics and economics, and his PhD is in individual and organizational behavior from Yale. He served as founder and director of both the War on Poverty, Yale Upward Bound program, and the Theater of Inquiry. He's taught leadership at Southern Methodist University, the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and the Carroll Graduate School of Management at Boston College, where he also served as graduate dean and later served as director of organizational transformation in the doctoral program. Bill consults to dozens of companies, not-for-profits, government agencies, and has served on numerous boards, notably at Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, for 20 years and at Trillium Asset Management. Bill serves as the principal of Action Inquiry Associates and as a founding member of the Action Inquiry Fellowship. So we're really excited about this, and to get us started, I'd like to just invite each of you to just come on. I want to make sure all the sound is working. Come on, say your name and where you are in the world, just so we get a sense of who's on the call today. And I'll start again. My name is Dawn Dole. I'm the Executive Director for the Taos Institute, and I'm calling in from northern Wisconsin. And I normally reside in Ohio, but I'm in northern Wisconsin right now. Spring, do you want to come on and just say your name and where you are in the world?
Hi, I'm Spring Chung. I'm calling from Seattle, Washington.
Great, thank you. Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily Gray. I am the social media specialist for the Taos Institute, and I'm calling from Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Okay, Jean?
This is Jean Hartman, and I'm calling from Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Great. Charlene?
Hi, my name is Shalene, and I'm calling from Vancouver, BC, Canada.
Okay, great. Welcome. And Leah?
My name is Leah Beach, and I'm a master's student at the University of Calgary in Calgary, Alberta. And there's a few other people here with me, Gina Coe and Barbara Pickering, who are PhD students here.
Great, great. Do you know if Monica Sesma is coming?
Yeah, she's just in a meeting right now, and she's going to come in a bit later.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much. And then I'm just going to turn it over to Hilary now to get us started.
Yeah, greetings, everybody. Thank you so much, Dawn, for that lovely introduction. And, you know, I've wanted to connect with Taos more and more since I have started to do some of the webinars that are being offered, because relational practice is so key to Taos, it's so key to action research, and obviously it's so key to Eros power. I'm here with my partner, who I'll introduce a little bit more in the context. I'm going to show a few slides to get us talking, but just for right now to say greetings. We're in Ashland, Oregon on the West Coast, just I guess down from Victoria, Canada. Hi there, Shailene.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm not Bill Torbert, but Bill Torbert introduced Hilary and I 4 years ago, and we're both life partners, and we also are doing this relational action inquiry along with a woman named Heidi Gutenkunst from Finland in organizational contexts, particularly with organizations that are going through the reinventing organization space. The three of us are developing work in that context.
Wonderful. So what I was thinking as a way to move us into conversation, I was going to show some slides that I created last night based on, you know, just different things that were running through my mind, and given the conversation that we've had on the Ning platform coming up to this. There's less than 10 slides, so do not worry. And I thought then we might take a mindful minute or two just in silence and listen into the space that's created from our voices and from these slides, and then open up into a fairly rich check-in. We're at the number where I think we could give a rich check-in, simply speaking from the heart and keeping that pretty lean, but speaking from the heart. What is it about this conversation that feels important to you? And then somehow we'll find our way into it, if that hopefully will work for you. Does that sound good? Great. So I'm going to share slides, share screen, so you'll see my slides. So this is simply by way of introduction. I'm introducing both these two items that I'm trying to integrate in our conversation with you. One is the huge importance in my life of the action research paradigm, which I think answers the question, how do we do research together and produce outcomes that we couldn't alone, excuse me, at the core of which, of course, is relational practice. And then a deeper dive into that, which is what Eros power, love, and the spirit of inquiry is about. And as mentioned, Bill, my dear partner over many, many years in all of this work, cannot be with us. The good news is he had a very successful surgery yesterday. The bad news is that surgery was brought up a number of weeks, so it came as a kind of a surprise that he was brought in yesterday. So he sends his apologies, is with us, of course, in spirit. And I'm just delighted to have my partner, Dana Carmen, who, as Dana mentioned, was introduced through Bill. So that feels right. And my sense is that we're talking today about reintegrating our hearts with our minds as we think about a transformational social science. And how does Eros, which is really this delightful life force that the universe gives us, how is Eros alive in that, and where does it get stuck? So to simplify matters, I'm kind of crystallizing these three issues of power, of inquiry, and of love. And it seems to me, given the developmental framework that Bill introduced me to, and which is very much alive in the book itself, Eros Power, in the earlier stages of our development, which usually coincides with being younger, so let's say up to the age of 35, 40, we think of power as somehow separate from love, and inquiry doesn't quite make its way into all of that. And then as we get a little older, we keep our wits about us, there comes the opportunity, not always that it happens, but there's at least the opportunity to interweave these things so that power is not so much a game of power over, but it's actually a co-creation with. But that's quite a developmental leap. And I think it's a leap that's very much infused by love and by inquiry, right? Giving and receiving of feedback. And I would say the life force of Eros is very much alive in that. And so what this looks like, if we're lucky, at later stages of development, is that there is awareness of one's own shadow. And the erotic shadow, I think by virtue of our culture and our biology, the erotic shadow is quite huge. We'll talk about that in a moment. And so to be able to integrate that shadow is quite a big deal. There's a sense of relief from old boundaries, which are often cultural scripts that we're simply living out for other people. They're not necessarily how we want to be living at all. There's the integration of the feminine with the masculine. And the reason that's good for humanity and for organization is I think this allows us then to support the growth of others. We're less obsessed with self. We can actually support the growth of others. There's a little quote there from Rainer Maria Rilke, and he reminds us that it's no small work, this, and in fact it could be the work of a lifetime. I can share these slides, by the way, if you're interested. Now, all of that sounds wonderful, and it is wonderful, and we can't step over the fact that our earliest energies, our earliest training is pretty much to suppress and deny. Eros, it often becomes a big part of that shadow. And these earlier energies, life is all about us. You know, it's all about me, and I've got to fit in with the crowd. I've got to be this conditioned self. And so I think unless we really inquire into that, that's essentially the lines of conditioning that we're bringing with us through our lives. And hence, I think some of the shadow around energy and, around Eros and power and how they intersect. So set into a developmental framework, which has been Bill's life work over the years, we see here, there's quite a lot on this slide, but basically this equator line is really where the mindset develops from being conventional and conditioned into self-authoring, where really we become individuated in the language of psychoanalysis, and we can begin to be more choiceful, more careful in our own self-expressions. And so love down at the earlier mindsets is kind of a selfish thing. It's a coercive power. Post-conventionally, it's more of a creative love, a visioning power. And this is what allows us then to move into a deeper collaboration with the other. And so power, inquiry, and love become interweaving. And there's three words written down there: integration, which I think really is the work of the later developmental stages. What is it we're trying to integrate is shadow. I'm a huge fan of psychoanalysis. If you've read the book at all, I mean, a lot of my work in that book is to integrate a psychoanalytic perspective with a mindfulness perspective into this developmental piece. And then I use the word woke, which is a term we're seeing more and more in American society as we grapple with issues of gender and race. And it simply reminds us, one, that we need to awaken out of the old conditioning around race and gender, which is not a small thing. And of course, we remember right now the mayhem in Orlando, not so very far from where Jean lives, where race and gender and sexuality and LBQT issues were all alive there, very much in shadow and violence. So woke is to be aware of the cultural conditioning and not to pretend like that we're purely individuals and, you know, I'm not at fault for the ills of society, but in fact, we all as members of society are so deeply conditioned by those things. We are, of course, not separate from anything. So those of you who like definitions, here's Bill's and my definition of erotic friendship. I'll just mention that originally, before the book became Eros Power, you know, the way you often write titles right at the very end before something gets published, we had been thinking of the book as being about friendship through the seasons of our lives. You know, as we live so much longer now than we did even 100 years ago, what is it to have friendship for up to 80, 90 years? It's a topic we don't think that enough attention has been given to. And how does Eros infuse these friendships? And so we feel that friendship has something to do with shared work. We feel this surge. Eros is really this surge toward the other. It's a kind of a soul-filled surge. We want to know the other. And it doesn't have to include sexuality. It can include sexuality, but it has to also transcend sexuality if it does. If it just gets stuck there, I think it doesn't cultivate these kind of finer experiences of friendship and creativity beyond that. And overcoming this stuckness with sexuality, as I think I've alluded to all along, is no small thing. And I think it remains a kind of a taboo issue for a whole bunch of reasons that I'd love to talk about. But there's this desire in an erotic friendship, be it sexual or not, to become more intimate, to make a commitment, to develop. There's a passionate yearning for the other without a desire or any practice of possession. We experience ourselves, therefore, as friends on a quest, developing the other. And Bill and I think a lot about how that friendship arises and is cultivated in a larger community around us. I put in the chakras there, partly just to remind me, but perhaps all of us, to get in touch with our body, our whole body, when we're in conversation with each other. Because often the wisdom of the body wants to be spoken through us. Too often we remain stuck in just what's above the neck. As I mentioned up front, one of my aspirations for our conversation is to think with you about how contemporary action research as a practice can be influenced by relational action inquiry. This integration is, I think, very key. Because as action researchers, we're all about creating knowledge that is transformational and it is deeply relational. So what does it mean to be woke to issues of Eros inside of those practices, rather than by, stepping around them, stepping over them, or saying, oh, Eros, that's got nothing to do with social science. What does it mean to take that seriously? And the final slide here is by a colleague of mine, also a colleague of Bill's. And it's a developmental slide by Elaine Barker-Herdman. And in it, you see the sense of self is growing over this kind of developmental journey that we may choose to go on in life. We're going from the expert black and white into redefining reality, redefining many concepts and frameworks as we work together. And ultimately, we say in action research, we're actually trying to transform systems. And so the self goes from being really rather small to being a much bigger self on this developmental journey. So with that, if you're game, I'd love to invite us into a 2 minutes mindfulness, just listening into the dark. It's a practice that Bill and I used in our relational action inquiry. And it's as simple as that. Please just listen into the dark. And I often, my advice, if you have a mindfulness practice, do whatever feels right for you. And if you don't, just feel your feet. Just bring your feet into the conversation. And then after these 2 minutes, I'll use my phone here with its chime. After 2 minutes, I'd then invite us into dialogue with a fairly rich check-in about what's moving for you, what you would like to be in conversation about. Okay? So I'm going to set the clock for 2 minutes, and you'll hear it chime, and we'll come back together. So I'm welcoming you all back and would love to hear a little check-in.
I can start.
Please.
Yeah, I feel very inspired by these ideas, personally and professionally. I work as a counselor with couples and with individuals and families. And I'm just thinking about this idea of Eros and that how you said that Eros can propel a surge towards the other, and then we can get stuck in this place of coercive dynamics. But if we're able to move beyond that, then we can get into this more creative place. And so as working with couples, I often see couples stuck at that place. And the work can be quite challenging. Like it can be quite challenging for me to figure out, well, how can I help this couple learn how to create more space so that they can start to balance this surge of Eros in a way that the energy doesn't overtake the relationship. I'm not sure if I'm understanding Eros correctly, but that's just what I'm grasping from the way you'd explained it. I haven't read the book yet, unfortunately, although I would love to. And so, yeah, that's the way I'm conceptualizing it now, like how to balance that surge with helping people to create space for that, maybe that surge to circulate a bit more, and to help people kind of work together more and be creative together, as opposed to being maybe overpowered by maybe some more innate instincts that might come up, surge into that space. So that's what came up for me in that mindfulness exercise.
Hi, it's Barbara. I'm a PhD student. Hi. We're here with my colleagues, Leah and Gina. And I've been a long time meditator and mindfulness practice. And my master's was doing action research. And there's this bridge that has never been articulated in my experience so much as just a doing and a living and a being. And so it's very heartening and encouraging. And I love the fact that you guys are bringing some conceptualizations, so being able to articulate it specifically. So we have words that can describe this connection between people. So when I'm working with, in my PhD, that my whole inquiry is around the way that we develop our relationships to move into action research, right, with the community. So I'm hoping to work with people who had a childhood experience of parental incarceration. But there's this piece of connection that is, I'm a counseling psychologist in training, and in all of my training, I've only heard one person use the word love when we're learning. And it's the weirdest thing, because in my mind, that's what we're doing. So it's Carl Tom, of course, is the only person that's actually in a class, in a formal training perspective, has used this word love. Now, the problem with love is it's a culturally loaded word. So I think that Eros is kind of a nice way to sidestep that, but it's also dancing on the edge of scary cultural weight, because then you get into erotic and things that people will sexualize. So, you know, I haven't read the book either, but now I really am going to, because this energy, but the way you describe it, it's surging it toward energy, that totally resonates with me and with my beingness, my entirety, that I understand from a longtime meditator and an action researcher. You know, these things are all part of who I am. And so I really love that you guys are doing this in such a way that I can bring it into kind of an academic conversation without losing the intuitive. I've always been that person in counseling, you know, that, oh, my friends all came to me, that story that everybody has. But I was really afraid of entering into academia because I didn't want to ruin the intuitive part of me that connects to people.
Sure.
And I think that we're just on the edge of starting to be able to collapse these different things together that are, you know, heart and soul and body and mind, and not have the separation. So I'm really very encouraged that you guys are talking these words and bringing, you know, you've got some pretty weighty reputations. So you're the big guys and you're saying this stuff, and it's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Spring. I'd like to share. So I actually just learned about this book recently from a friend who, actually I read an article about your book, The Eros Power, published on Enlivening Edge. the online magazine Enlivening Edge, and a friend of mine worked for that community, so he introduced that to me. Actually, he's the board member of our nonprofit organization. So I was so super excited when I read about this article because it's so relevant with the path, the journey, my personal and professional journey. I was actually trained as a scientist, biologist, and then I had my second career as a Chinese medicine practitioner. So I studied Taoism. Taoism is my lifelong passion. So before I met my current partner, I thought that was my professional life, is working with medicine in two different paradigms, Western and Eastern. But meeting my partner and the Eros power between us completely changed both of our life journey and brought me to a place that I never even dreamed in my wildest imagination before. And I realized after everything happened between us, I realized that our relationship has an entity, has a spirit of itself, and it's guiding us through many rounds of transformation, which was exceedingly challenging. But this relationship actually followed a very well-kept secret of a Taoism alchemy practice, which has to do with the male-female sexual energy. And there's a great rich body of knowledge in the ancient time, how to create the sexual energy. And it also has to do with the Kundalini energy arising, bring that intuitive second chakra energy to open up the third chakra, the visioning, psychic energy. So we had this experience between us, and out of that, our collaboration, now we created this nonprofit organization. We just started this year, where we're going to develop our work. And so right now, we have this wealth of experience, and we're building kind of conceptual framework and the language, and finding allies to broaden our horizon. So I'm just super, and this paper, came to me right at this time. So that was really, such a wonderful opportunity to meet you guys, and I look forward to reading the book itself, and possibly having a conversation with a deeper relationship with you guys.
Wonderful.
This is Jean. I think I'll follow spring because I think of my story as being winter. So I think what intrigues me about Eros and power is that I think I've ignored or avoided both all my life, most of my life. And it worked for me, I think, to not be a part of, to not engage and acknowledge power from the point of humility, being that I have Asian background, it suit me. And the Eros part, I think it's a matter that, I understood the sensuality that maybe I exuded at youth, and having experiences both good and bad of what that means when it's interacted upon. So I kept kind of an arm's length with Eros and power all my life. And I think what came to me, and so all of this is in a frame of like self-inquiry for me at this point. If there's a kind of stage that goes from self-inquiry to inquiry with others, and being able to develop a love that transcends a lot of this, I think I'm still sort of in that self space, trying to understand what this is for me. So that's like in a bucket of itself. So I have a feeling that there's a lot that I can step out from. But I had an aha just this week as I was communicating with Hilary and Bill. That it is I'm hearing myself echo. Are you guys hearing that? Is that better? Okay. So the second part that I want to share is I had an aha moment this week as I was communicating with Hilary and Bill, and also just thinking about this for myself, that in my work, I mostly work with women. And actually, women have been a source of conflict for me as I was growing up. I have a very challenging relationship with my mother, still do, even in her elderly years. She still is, to me, someone who's so strong and overbearing and overpowerful. And I don't so much think that I'm in her shadow, but I work so hard to be different for myself, and to not follow in her path, to make different choices. And I have all those options to do it. But I think sometimes in my heart I say to myself, you know, this is a woman that I admired when I was growing up, but yet now I see her so differently. So there's that conflictual feeling that I'd experienced. And here is Eros and power working at the same time. I'm so drawn to her, yet I repel her, you know, and I reject her. But the aha moment that I had was about how to work with other women who have these pulls on them that are coming from our environment, that are different sources. So I'm, you know, there's this self-inquiry that I have with Eros and powers, and then there's this other space of when I'm in company of other women, I can see what's going on, in part because I experienced it. So I think for me, the challenge will be, how do I bridge? How do I bring that together and grow together with them and grow together within myself and with my mother? So I'll pause there.
Does anybody else wish to check in? I know there's a few more on the call, not that you have to, but there is a space here that will be co-created if you do.
You'd like me to? I'm drawn to this conversation because, as many of you are speaking, it integrates, at its best, it integrates all the things that matter to me most. And it seems to me, one of the things that Hilary said, this is, people are obsessing about this conversation and having conversations that just create suffering. And it seems to me that this is a way to have this conversation so that it makes a difference, where we can actually be conscious, where we can actually get a sense of what is it that's going on here when we talk about Eros and we talk about power and we talk about love. What is it? Why is there so much as, who was the first person to speak? Emily.
Shalene.
Shalene was speaking. Why is there so much craving about this and not space around it? And how do we integrate these parts of who we are? so for me, just from a place, rather than, it seems to me like this is a place where we're already so concerned and so interested, and so when it's working, there's so much creativity, and it feels to me like if there's going to be any kind of transformation of a society or of an organization or a system, that we're going to need to work with our own relationship to these energies, to be able to connect the head and the heart and our power, our lower energies. We're going to need to be able to integrate them. And if we're going to be able to work in organization or in collaboratively with others, we're going to need to be able to understand and talk with and work with the energy that's between us. And Spring, your sharing is such a beautiful example of the creativity that you've created a practice to be able to work with, to use that energy and to use that creativity as fuel for transformation. And then you're creating a system and a structure, a third person set of systems to serve people. And this is something for me that's been very much a lifelong quest. And I think when Hilary and I first met, we spoke about being able to have a relationship where there was connection on all chakras and, this integration. And so I would say that that our relational practice is about working with either the creativity and the whoosh of Eros together, both for our own nourishment and sustainment and for our service in the world, or we're dealing with the barriers to that. We're dealing with the places where energy's still stuck in me, mine, or these early woundings. Jean, you spoke about your mom. It seems to me that when we really get into this work, we can't really have a mature relationship with these energies unless we've dealt with our own family of origin energies. And so for me, this feels to me like an integration of things that really matter to me: societal transformation, the transformation of relationship, and the transformation and liberation of myself. And so I'm very, this is really an important conversation. I feel honored. I said to Hilary at the beginning, I said, this is what it often to be. I'm often in a situation where I'm one man with a group of women. And I want to notice on one level, we're all the same. On another level, we're not. And I feel honored to be part of this conversation with all of you.
Thank you. And the invitation remains for the duration of our call I don't know, how do you do it, Dawn? You just kind of wave if you want to come into the conversation, and then we'll give space, especially to those who haven't spoken. But a couple of things came up for me. One, just, the feeling body feels very welcome in this conversation. I feel like I can bring my full self. And I think that's, it's a feedback loop, right? It's you're speaking from your heart allows me to speak from my heart. So in some ways, certainly Barbara articulated it, but I think we're all kind of saying the same. How do we create relational space from which, as an action researcher anyway, new practice, new action, transformation can arise? And so the teaching for me, and perhaps for all of us here on this webinar, is, well, this is what it feels like. It's like, get anchored in this. And I loved Spring's language. It's rather mystical. I am myself a Buddhist teacher, so I love the mystical. And some of the questions is, how do we turn the mystical into more the Western paradigm, and how do we integrate those? And I'm sure I could learn an enormous amount from you about that. But this idea of releasing, or because I don't want it to sound in any way less than, but second chakra energy into third chakra, so Kundalini awakening, however we want to call it, to cultivate this seems so profoundly important as a practice to really allow transformative conversations to happen, because then they come from the heart that is then imbued with our energy. Was it Martin Luther King who said, power without love is dangerous, it's horrific. Love without power is anemic, or something like that. I'm sure he said it far better. But this integration of these is so powerful at a time, again, I think, of Orlando, and what kind of response needs to be there. And I want to just casually mention that I'm marching in the gay parade with the Zen Kids program that I teach, like Sunday school for Zen, for baby Buddhists. And we're marching in the gay parade, and I think our words are something like Orlando, you, me, one, to signal non-separation, because the man who acted so horribly in Orlando is also in me, is also in us, is in our culture, right? That kind of deep hatred, but also this deep celebration and rainbow colorful life is also in our culture. And we're very lucky to allow that flourish here too. So in some ways, those are present also in the conversation, right? As we're trying to work with the mom that's still inside, man, and if you do read the book, a lot of it, of course, is about mom, because the 2-year-old is so profoundly impacted by mom and dad, of course. So how we relate in the gender space, and it is interesting that Dana finds himself as the only man in this conversation, and that's also, I think, an avenue of exploration for us, how we as women, and Bill and I are quite clear about this. Jean on the Ning platform before the call said to Bill, as many people do, hey, in your book, Hilary's voice seems stronger than yours. And his response was, partly that's his own conditioning around conflict and stuff, but the other part is we're perhaps at a time in history where the feminine needs to rise and to speak clearly. And our training doesn't always allow that. So let me pause there and see if others wish to come into the conversation. I see we also have some new folks. You're very welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Monica. I don't know who else is in the room with you, but welcome. We're just going to be winding down here in a little bit. So you wanna join in at all or say anything?
No, I will. You continue with the conversation.
Okay. Yeah, they're going to have an echo feedback loop. It sounds like they're in a big room with a couple people, so they might get some feedback loop. Hilary, when we talk about Orlando, and then with the ideas of Eros and power, I just wonder if you might talk for a minute on power and privilege. There was some comments on Facebook this week from some of the Taos associates around the privileged whites, heterosexual whites just don't get the power issues that were, and the violence. I don't know if you can comment on that, but it would be helpful to get your take.
I think the book is, in a way, a journey into how do we invite the other to talk about privilege. And the book was written over a period of about 3 years. And in a way, the biggest stumbling block was privilege. And thank God for this word privilege. It packs so much simplicity into this term. To talk about privilege alone is relatively easy. To throw arrows at the other is relatively easy. There's a lot of pain for many of us in our history, and we feel that we've been oppressed by the other, and in many circumstances culturally that is absolutely true. And so 2 things to say. One, when it is true, when I feel that I have had the privilege of my whiteness, for example, or the privilege of my education and all of that, I think in those circumstances, what's important is to simply give space to those who have been burdened by that privilege, and to hear from them. In the context of working with Bill, we got to joke around it. He had the full suit of social privilege, right? The WASP suit: white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, heterosexual, heteronormativity, all the, the whole thing. And Bill has been a dear mentor and now a friend to me. So to talk about that was difficult, because I think the big learning in the book was his somewhat oblivion, really, to how much that is alive, even when he's working with a woman like me who also has a whole load of privilege too. But there's something about the feminine and the masculine, and to connect it to Orlando, the privileging of the masculine perspective, which has been a privileging of a kind of a suppression of female eros, and a privileging of heterosexual normativity, all of that. And so to bring such a violent response into the gay community, leashed also to, patriarchal religion, that's like the mother lode right there for us as a culture to work with. So there's no easy answers, except, as has been indicated on the call, the work of inquiry, the work in relationship feels profoundly important. And we're not enough doing this work with the other, partly because it makes us feel profoundly uncomfortable. So if there's any invitation out of this, and maybe some of us want to talk further on Ning and maybe even practice with this, it's the invitation to do that conversation about privilege with the other in such a way that their humanness stays in relationship to my humanness. We don't make each other wrong.
I would like to, Hilary, your what you just talked about was so touched me at a very deep place. So I'd like to respond just what's alive for me. In hearing your words, the intense collaboration that happened between me and my partner, who's a white male, very educated white male, in the last 4 years, our relationship is kind of like a cauldron, where all these dynamic of, a culture of privilege and the Eastern culture, which is globally underprivileged, and the men and women, and also an intellectual approach versus a more kinesthetic and intuitive approach. All these are bouncing back and forth, and sometimes fought fiercely in the cauldron of relationship. And through that experience, one thing that I took away was that as the individual who stood on the side of the oppressed, it actually my reaction. How do I react to someone's, especially the unconscious privilege? Like my partner is very progressive. He's very aware, but none of this will give him the awareness to extend to the other side of the globe or the other female body. It's biology. It's not his fault. And come down to it, it's how, as the oppressed one, how do I find a creative way to react to it, to lead him, to guide him, to show him in a way that does not put him down, does not make him wrong, and that makes me have to look at my own deeper grief, deeper anguish, deeper rage, in order to get to a place to see that's even possible. So I just want to share that.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm touched especially by the acknowledgement that there's shadow there for us, isn't there? There's grief and there's rage, and we become bound up because we've been so taught, don't express grief or rage, often by those who are unconscious about the power that's there. So much is also the work of first person inquiry, to simply accept the grief and rage that is there. That's huge. And then not to bring that in its raw form. It cannot be brought in its raw form. It's too destructive to everybody, especially in a couple relationship, as Charlene was talking about. But how to transform that darkness into light. When Dana and I do our relational inquiry, maybe this by way of ending, moving towards it's like a little party gift, that how we do it, and it's defined in the book, is we sit together for about an hour a week. We carve out this week, and we come into it through a meditative eye gazing or 2-minute silence. Depends whether we're in happy or sad mood or angry. Depends, right? So we have to honor that. And then we just check in with each other. What's there for you? What's there for you? And speak back, especially the emotional content, so that the person feels heard. And we bound it strictly into an hour. And it's not like you can get everything done in an hour at all. But it's an indication that we are there for each other with whatever is true and what's real. And one of the little framings for that is our desire to transform the energy of the darkness into the light in our relationship. And the magic word is ally, that I see you as an ally. Because what so often happens for all of us, because of our conditioning at the earlier years, the other feels like they have so much more power than I do, because mom had more power, dad had more power, right? And we continue to look at the other as if they have more power when we're upset. And it becomes a power over. So either I'm going to crumple under that, or I'm going to try to beat you. So how to see the other as ally and become, collaborative together is then the work of that hour together.
I was going to try something, but yes. Asked me just now how to become so that was nice. You didn't hear?
Yeah, Gina, can you repeat that?
Yes, I think what struck me with what Hilary just shared is how to become collaborative with your quote-unquote enemy, whatever you identify as the nemesis in your life. And I think that that's very helpful for me, because there's no question about integration. There's no question about wanting to be transformative, but I think it's about how do you transition into that space as someone who isn't quite ready to do that. That I think is something that I'm challenged with, both personally and at work. And so it's something that I will explore within action research and action inquiry. So this is all very, very relevant, and I thank you for all the ways that you keep repeating these concepts. I think they're very helpful.
So, Hilary, why don't we wind down? And if you have some closing comments, and then I'll close the call out.
By way of wind down, it feels like we're just getting started, isn't it? And so it flashed in my mind that part of the function of this type of conversation is it's kind of a meetup, to meet up meet up with like-minded people. And so I'm certainly wanting to continue the conversation, and I think Dawn will help us know how to do that. I happen to know, which I think is a hoot, like over in London, a friend of mine who was going to make this call but was unable, she's hosting meetups around Eros power, and had 20 people show up at the last meetup. So there's some energy, right, especially among women, it appears, not only women, but to have these conversations and to help each other have these conversations, which speaks to Jean's question, because we can't keep having them alone. We need courage to move into relationship and have these conversations. So thank you, Dawn, for providing a stepping stone into perhaps a community of inquiry around this that could also link back to, I still get a hoot from Barbara saying, you know, in all these years of her PhD study, she's heard the word love once. I agree, it's a hoot. And yet this experience is one that we crave throughout our whole lifetime, throughout the seasons of our lives. So how do we also bring that into our professional and our inquiry endeavors?
Yeah, thank you so much, Hilary. This has just been amazing, wonderful conversation, and thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you, Dana, for stepping in for Bill. And, I'd really like to encourage all of you to join us on the NING site. I just posted the link for this conversation that a few people participated in over the week, but I think some of you did not go to that space to participate yet, and this might be a wonderful way to continue this conversation. I'm going to ask Hilary and Bill to check in on that space periodically over the next couple weeks. And just, if you want to share what you shared in this conversation today, put that on the NING site and get some more conversation going, some support and dialogue. This space is going to be available. It's there. We're not going to close it down. It's going to be there for a long time. And Karen, I see you're just joining us, and we're just closing out. So we're inviting everyone to continue the conversation on the NING platform at our Taos online community space. I posted the link for everyone to go there, invite others to join in that conversation, and let's see if we can continue, and maybe there's a part 2 in 6 months if you would like to continue with a part 2 webinar. Just let us know if there's more energy around this. And again, thank you so much, Hilary, for being a part of this week, and all of you who joined online and today. And Emily will save the recording from this webinar today, and we will post it on this page of our online community space also. So you're welcome to access that recording and share it with students or to get other conversations going. And thank you again. And we look forward to another time together.
Yeah.
And we can post